For the Jawi of Southern Thailand and for the ancient Malays, magic has always been a part of life. It starts with the wind that blows from beyond the natural world, bearing with it the voices of the ancestors and the gods. The earth itself has a huge hole through its center, the belly button of the sea. It is home to those evil spirits responsible for all illnesses and natural catastrophes. The wind from the cosmos rushes into this hole through the human world, bringing to the land of men Rajo Balo, the Prince of Calamities. The evil spirits fall upon humanity, possessing it, and that is the origin of diseases. For the Jawi, the man who can master this wind, his inner breath, is called a bomo, a shaman healer who, with the help of the ancestors and the protective divinities, can simply by blowing on a sick person with his healing breath, overcome the disease-bearing power of the external wind. But he must secure the non-involvement of the spirits of earth and sky, especially the dangerous Prince of Calamities. To charm these spirits while he heals his patient, the bomo makes supernatural music by blowing his healing breath over a piece of the legendary Bulo Perenu, the enchanted bamboo that is renowned for growing alone in the middle of a pond. None can resist the spellbinding song of this siren of the plant world, not even the fearsome mother tiger. To keep the spirits quiet, the great bomo, like Mare, place a little piece of an enchanted bamboo between their teeth, just as political orators do, and the shadow play narrators. Thus prepared, the bomo blows his healing breath onto a bowl of water to consecrate it, transforming its contents into blessed water, a magical protective medicine for both body and soul. The Jawi have a special skill, famous throughout Southeast Asia. They breed highly prized zebra doves to take part in birdsong contests. And so that they will bewitch everyone with their magnificent cooing, the water the birds drink is enhanced by the breath of the shaman, equipped with his little piece of enchanted bamboo. The wind is also the very origin of the devil. The Jawi have three main creation myths. The first one goes like this. God, Tue, created the first man, Ade. He fashioned a body out of clay and put a little of his breath of life into the closed left hand of an archangel who was to slip it into the lifeless form. But the angel was too curious and let a bit of it escape from his grasp. This was the origin of the first phantom, the devil Ible. Man has made his own versions of the magic bamboo that can enchant both gods and demons, in the form of tall magic helixes called baling, and of moon-shaped kites, wabule, that flutter and hum over the paddy fields to protect the soul of the rice. Indeed, nazik, the rice, is what matters most to the Jawi. It is their vital and fragile staple food, and it has given rise to complex rituals. The helixes represent the enchanted bamboo and the shaman's mastery of the wind. Their gentle hiss gives voice to the supernatural music and magic that charms gods, spirits, and ghosts, and symbolizes also the voice of the ancestral protectors. Erected just before the annual harvest, in January or February, these magic helixes charm both the evil spirits and the soul of the rice throughout the harvest, preventing storms as well as invasions of insects or other predators. They also make very good musical scarecrows. At harvest time, bad luck has to be warded off by flying kites fitted with wind rattles over the paddy fields in order to seduce Jawi-Malay, the guardian spirit of the rice, with their song, just like the shaman with his enchanted bamboo. Before the harvest begins, the bomos, who must be male, carry the soul of the rice, the 7 first stalks that have been cut, to its palace, in other words, the granary. Jawi-Malay and the soul of the rice, the latter symbolized by a zebra dove, are both the children of the mythical bird of paradise, Ché Héng Léseng. The legend tells us this mythical bird had no legs, so had to keep flying both day and night without ever landing. One day the female laid an egg on the male's back. When the fledgling hatched, the 2 halves of the broken shell fell towards the earth. The first half landed on the ground and transformed itself into the serpent Chitomani, who resembles the stem of rice. It symbolizes the elder child, the man, the crocodile, the naga, the monsoon, the earth, the sun, and the sticky rice, which is ugly but powerful. The other half of the shell fell into a tree and gave birth to the golden zebra dove. It is the younger child, the woman, the eagle, the garuda, the dry season, the sky, the moon, and the prettier white rice. The zebra dove is the symbol of the soul of the rice, Semanga Padi, that protects both the divine grain itself and all humanity. She gives to the rice its divine taste and all its value. She's like a beautiful young girl, fragile and delicate, or like the firefly, or kune, that is her double, a kind of ladybird of good omen. This is the source of the Jawi's passion for breeding zebra doves. So as not to alarm the soul of the rice, causing it to flee, making the harvested rice taste bad and endangering next year's harvest, the stalks are cut delicately, one by one, with an old-fashioned rice knife, whose blade the woman wielding it keeps hidden with her fingers. Indeed, the harvest is woman's work, whereas ploughing is men's work. Harvesting is slow using this rice knife, but it has the advantage of being accurate, allowing the selection of only the ripe ears and setting aside the rest for later. The harvested ears of rice, carefully selected one by one, are then bound together in sheaves, gurma, to be carried off to the palace of the soul, the granary. The whole process is surrounded by many taboos. For instance, it is forbidden to whistle while working, or when one is in the rice field. The sheaves, which are only ever carried by the women, are entrusted to the granary under the magic protection of Ibu Padi, the mother of mills. The life of the Jawi is above all a rural one, taking its rhythm from the natural seasons and crops. Once the rice harvest is in and safely stored, the Jawi at last have time to celebrate. The first and most essential of the many celebrations is to thank all existing divinities for this new harvest, by preparing a banquet for them, where drunk with pleasure they will forget all their ill will towards mankind, and permit future harvests to be bounteous. The Jawi first give thanks to Allah and then to the ancient spirits. Islam came to Patani in the 14th century, but until recently it was no more than a superficial influence on people here, whose beliefs had remained firmly grounded in animism. The Jawi never forget to salute their ancient divinities, because, after all, you never know. The most important of those divinities is the legendary white elephant with black tusks, and that's the second of their creation myths. A long time ago, the famous kingdom of Langkasuka covered the whole of the Malay Peninsula. It stretched from present-day Patani on the east coast of Thailand to the island of Langkawi on the west coast of what is now Malaysia. There, a fabulous beast emerged from the ocean right near the present city of Patani. It was the first elephant, the ancestor, the white elephant with black tusks. The Raja, alerted by fishermen, came running with his guards, but the animal had disappeared inland. "Where did this elephant appear?" asked the king. "Here, on this beach, Patani, Patani." At that very spot, the sand had remained perfectly white, so the Raja decided to build his new capital there, which he named Patani. The Sultanate of Patani was famous for its naval cannons, which were cast in the 17th century. It was conquered by Siam in the 18th century, annexed to the Thai kingdom in 1909, and is today divided into provinces: Patani, Yala, and Narathiwat. To distinguish themselves from the now independent Malays, its inhabitants refer to themselves as the Jawi, or people of the Great Java. These days, the elephants of Patani are used only to haul away the felled trees from forests and rubber plantations, but they remain the symbol of the ancient sultanate. The Jawi ascribe the loss of their political clout to the disappearance of the white elephant with black tusks, and precious relics and magic marks left by the beast are still venerated. For the Jawi, ritual banquets inevitably are associated with important ceremonies, and rites of passage, such as births, weddings, and funerals, call for a lot of coconuts. Just like the famous sugar palm, the coconut palm is a tree of 1,000 uses. The flesh of the coconuts, dried by wood smoke, is sold to Chinese traders in the form of copra for making oil. This provides extra income for the peasants, who are quite poor and make a living mainly from their rice fields, while rubber trees provide some ready cash. The coconut is one of the basics of local gastronomy. They are therefore in demand on a daily basis, but they're hard to get at on those very high palm trees. The Jawi, though, have found the solution. Coconuts are very cleverly harvested by non-violently trained macaques. The monkeys know perfectly well which are ripe. They rarely get it wrong. They climb up just once for each coconut grove. When they get to the top of the first tree, they simply jump from one tree to the next, before coming back down from the last one. Yusuf rewards his monkey for his good work with the sweet coconut juice it likes so much. And the monkey, in its own way, thanks its owner and friend. To open the young green coconuts and get their flesh, the hair-like fibers have to be removed first. A skillful blow with the machete on the eye of the shell produces 2 perfect half shells filled with milky flesh. Women prepare on the spot a few tender and sweet young nuts as treats for the children, but they take the bulk of the harvest back to be prepared at home. They leave, taking home as many coconuts as they can, while the men and their monkeys keep on working. Once the coconuts have all been opened, the men of the village all gather round to grate the flesh needed to prepare coconut milk or satay. It's tiring work. Just like for marriages or circumcisions, any big banquet starts off with the scraping sound of the coconut graters. The oil for cooking the meat has to be made ready. The men sit astride wooden stools fitted out with graters, koré, that are carved into forms that are sometimes bawdy or suggestive, and sometimes frankly erotic. When it's not a special feast time, it is their wives who straddle the coconut graters. Preparation for a banquet always gets underway at nightfall. The next morning, an endless stream of guests arrives to taste the ritual gula, a kind of curry of bull or buffalo meat. Often, even at the banquets of the poorest families, more than 2,000 people can turn up. Meanwhile, a second team is sacrificing several buffaloes, as is still the custom at the big ritual ceremonies. This is not only so they can fill the cooking pots with tasty curry. This animal plays an important role in Jawi mythology. In the third great creation myth, that of the black bull, Tué created the universe, then the angels, and lastly mankind. The globe was unstable, so Tué transformed an archangel into a huge whale and set the world on its back. The earth was still moving, though, so he placed them on top of a very big rock. But the world kept on wobbling, so Tué changed another archangel into a huge black bull and placed the globe suspended between its immense horns. He shook it all to test it. At once, the eastern part of the world disappeared, and ever since, the globe has remained stable. In the village, the real festival takes place the night before, with all the preparations for the feast that thousands of guests will enjoy the following day. The neighbors all have to be thanked for their help and given heart to get through the long night's work. A successful banquet always features some entertainment, and here it is the roye kule, the shadow play. The head of the Todale, the narrator, starts the ceremony by ensuring good luck, as he gives the ancestors' spirits an offering of money, cooked rice, a quid of betel leaves with a areca nut, and 3 lit candles to symbolize his wind. The shadow play is always accompanied by ritual music. To the ears of the villagers, the musicians are also reproducing the strange song of the Enchanted Bamboo, Bulo Perenu, with the piercing notes of their oboes, drums, cymbals and gongs, which symbolize both the healing breath of the Bomo and the voice of the guardian ancestors. The shadow play relates an episode from the epic Seramo, the Jawi's very own version of the Ramayana. The puppet figures are stuck into the tender trunk of a banana tree, ready to make their entrance. First on stage is the hero, Wasso, the faithful companion of the Prince Seramo, and a kind of Superman whose saliva, thanks to betel nut, has magical powers. The beautiful Siti Dewi has been abducted by her father and must be saved. Seramo is the eternal lover of the charming Princess Siti Dewi and the enemy of the evil Maharaja Mano, her incestuous father, ruler of the kingdom of the island of Langkawi. The adventures of Seramo and the shadow play in general are a form of social critique for the Jawi, a way of freely expressing with humor their political criticisms. In the morning, the buffalo meat, which has been simmering all night in coconut milk and spices, is ready. The women of the village have also prepared side dishes of vegetables, as well as budu, their delicious brine made from anchovies fermented in salt mixed with durian flesh. Now to cook the rice. They make a bit of sticky rice and a great deal of white rice. Steaming white rice in these quantities is a real art, so the specialists, kuku nasik, are called in. They're always men, not because men make better cooks, but because the work is simply too tiring for women. The rice, the buffalo curry, the vegetables, the brine, everything's ready. This is a Muslim country, so women eat separately. While ordinary guests eat white rice at tables set up on chairs under big tents, the owner of the house receives his very important guests in the much-coveted place of honor, at the chopping board in the kitchen, surrounded by the remains of the meat. Only very important people get to sit here and be offered a plate not of cooked white rice as ordinary guests, but of sticky rice. Organizing such huge ceremonies with so many people invited to huge feasts that must please both men and the gods takes a lot of money. The Jawi earn it by means of various traditional occupations. Fruit and vegetable plantations, harvesting palm sugar, growing rice, tapping rubber trees, or fishing. It falls to the poorest people to do the perilous work of collecting the palm sugar. The climbers gather the juice of the flowers of the borassus palm and its sugar in bamboo tubes that they place in the treetops both morning and night. This is a dangerous activity, since the hook-on stripped bamboo ladders they use are not particularly sturdy, and the palm trees are often over 20 meters high. When work is over, they reward themselves with a traditional cigarette made of local tobacco rolled from the leaves of the nipa palm and a nice refreshing palm juice drink. They then take the juice they've collected to turn it into palm sugar and, but don't say I told you this, tuwo, the traditional palm wine for feast days, strictly forbidden. The climate in Patani is sub-equatorial, and the region was once covered by an immense primary forest, peopled, according to Jawi beliefs, with spirits. It has now been replaced with rubber plantations, the hevea, or weeping tree as they say, which has no particular magical powers. The majority of the Jawi make a modest but regular living from cultivating rubber trees. Some of them literally sell their whole plantation estate to pay for ceremonial banquets and other ostentatious expenditures, while many save their money. Contrary to what many experts believe, it is mostly the women who look after rubber trees. They set out every morning at dawn, if it hasn't rained, to tap the tree trunks that are lined up like rows of noble martyrs ready to give their milky blood for the economic glory of their country. Thailand is now the world's biggest producer of natural rubber. International experts used to think that all these smallholders had no idea how to properly manage these natural piggy banks. They soon found out, though, that the Jawi obtained the world's highest yields. The task is a delicate one. You have to refresh the notch in the tapping panel without damaging the wood. The latex in the lactiferous layer is not sap. It is found in between the wood and the bark. Once the latex has been harvested, it is poured into molds to be made into rubber sheets by adding to the latex a solution of formic acid that coagulates it. The rubber extracted from its tray is kneaded like dough, then put through two kinds of mangle. The sheets are laid out to dry under the stilts of the house for at least 5 days before they're sold. The quality of the rubber, and hence its price, depends on how clean it has been kept through its processing. In recent years, at the request of the buying companies, the Jawi have started to sell their fresh latex in bottles, like milk. The sheets of rubber are then taken to the Toke, the local merchant, a notable. 30 bahts a kilo for the best quality, less than €1. It's not much, but this is an almost daily income. After the usual stage of weighing, the deal is concluded over a cup of tea. This particular Toke specializes in dried rubber in sheets. Usually, Tokes are Chinese merchants, highly enterprising and often practicing usury, with interest that can be as high as 20% per month, to the point that this one actually ended up owning most of the local rice paddies and rubber plantations, but under the name of the simple peasant they used to belong to. But the Jawi are not particularly attached to these orderly trees all lined up on parade. The weeping trees only came to Patani at the beginning of the 20th century. That's not long enough ago for them to have any claim to the same magical powers as the ancient rice. The people in the highlands have their rubber small holdings and paddy fields, but for those down on the coast, fishing is their speciality. The coast of Patani is well stocked with fish and other marine life. The Jawi fish with pots woven from a kind of prickly vine called daong ribu, underneath which their catch is trapped. Ever since 1990, the use of this very resistant and highly protected species of vine has been strictly regulated, so they now use nylon. There are all kinds of delicious fish in these waters, such as sea bream, tuna and grouper, or tasty big blue crabs, as well as a lot of anchovies that, salted and transformed into brine, make budu, the trademark dish of both the Jawi and their neighbours, the Malays of Kelantan. The Jawi fishermen take to sea every day during the dry season in their magnificent sail-powered kolek boats with their forked prows and sterns. The latest thing, though, is the patakirak, literally the cut-ass boats that can take a motor. These floating works of art are covered with symbolic and, of course, magical illuminations painted by local artists and, above all, healers, whose purpose is to ward off shipwrecks and to ensure an ever more miraculous catch. The combinations of mythical figures of naga serpents and winged garudas are all inspired by the great epics passed on through oral tradition, and especially by the story of Seramo. While on some boats, the artists have obviously found their inspiration on the TV, and their allusions are to rather more modern myths. When it comes to magic, you're better off dealing with real experts, be they men or plants. And if you want the protection of magic, you can't do much better than a well-made ceremonial kris dagger, forged by a master blacksmith with special powers. For the Jawi, as for most societies of Southeast Asia, we all contain within us the 5 vital elements: earth, water, fire, wind, and iron. However, if a man is exceptionally talented and can master the wind that blows within him, he will become a bomo, or healer. And if he masters his internal iron, he will be an iron master, in other words, a blacksmith. That's why, if any important occasion, such as a banquet or ceremony, is to have a destiny to match it, and if the auguries are all to be good, it was always said, and it still is said, that it is essential to have forged a ceremonial rippled kris, the mystical weapon of the old Malay world with its flaming blade. And this time it is a blade with 7 waves, the perfect form, that has been ordered from Patani's most famous master, the venerable Pana Ché Héng, disciple of the legendary Pana Sera. Ché Héng is nearly 90 years old and is starting to show his age, so it's his son Senih who does the work. Their assistant works the horizontal bellows, based on those of the ancient Chinese goldsmiths. Forging a kris awakens such awesome forces that to witness this alchemy in action is almost unheard of. This is probably the first time it has been filmed. It takes 7 kinds of iron to make ramong, or as we call it, Damascus steel. 6 layers of 6 different metals are sandwiched between a 7th that is bent around and over them. It is the best kind of alloy, obtained by the difficult Damascus technique and by the increasingly rare use of mud fusion. Senih starts by preparing the clay slurry that will be used for the fusion. He then dips the red-hot, roughly forged blade into the slurry so as to completely cover it. This will make for a perfect fusion, much better than simple welding. The blade is then returned to the fire, but this time to get even hotter. This is where the alchemy comes in. Beneath their thin coating of clay, the different metals start to melt together and become one. The master Pana Ché Héng looks on impassively. He was honoured in 1993 by Her Majesty Sirikit, Queen of Thailand, with the title of National Artist, thanks to the efforts of the French ethnologist who brought him to the attention of the authorities in Patani and Bangkok. And the metals melt together, transmogrifying under the hammer blows into an excellent Damascus steel. Little by little the kris takes shape, under the precise so-called two winds pounding of the hammer and the mace used simultaneously. Now it's time to shape the 7 waves that give the blade its characteristic strange and sinuous shape. The blacksmith is the most complete of the healers, the only one to master in his art all the 5 essential elements at the same time: fire, earth, air, water, and iron. That is why his krises are so powerful. If the blade is an alloy of 7 metals, and if it's well made, it possesses magical power and protects the house against attack, robbery, and fire. There was a time when both princes and ordinary men always wore a kris on their hip. To know a blade's power, one has to measure it. Earth, water, fire, wind. Earth, water, fire, wind. Earth. This blade is fresh, it's powerful. If it's wind, it would be mad. If it's fire, it would be a killer. Water, it would be beneficent. Earth, the blade is powerful. Yes, that's how it was in the days of the kings, in olden times. And Senih tells the story of the Raja who had lost his kingdom and who regained his power thanks to his magic kris. There was once a great king who had 3 sons. To the first he left his kingdom, to the second he left his fortune, but to the third, his favorite, he left his kris. It only takes a morning to forge a kris. The morning of Tuesday, day dedicated to war, but it will now take weeks to file it to its final form. Another great bomo, Ché Pado'Mih, sculpts, in the characteristic Patani style, the pommel of the kris into the head of a mythical monster, the Gagok Suro, which actually represents the Hindu god Shiva. Once the master of the forge has fashioned a powerful blade, there are other intercessors who have to be called upon, to ensure that it is not only a weapon, but a veritable companion and equerry, a faithful friend filled with magic power. The ancient Malay princes, if they were invited to a feast but could not attend, would send their kris to represent them like an ambassador, just as if it were a real person. So the Bomos Mare and Pado'Mih perform the ancient and extremely rare ceremony of summoning the souls. The first Bomo brings the kris to life, and the second transforms it into his own double and a human being. To do so, Mare, with a splinter of enchanted bamboo between his teeth, invokes the protection of the divinities of the ancient pantheon, the bird of paradise, the weird tiger, the white elephant with black tusks, the naga and the garuda. And as the guardian wind from the voices of the ancestors plays around the candle flame, the soul of the kris descends, drawn down by its avatar, the colourful rice cake, and by the offerings of small change, traditional rice cakes, sweet bananas, sugar cane, eggs, chicken, and quids of betel. To facilitate the outcome, as well as to encourage the descent of the soul, the Bomos scatter the spirit's representation popped rice, while each of those present passes the eaglewood or benzoin incense burner round the circle, after making it revolve around his own body in order to close the ritual cosmic circle, just as the earth makes a large circle around the sun and the moon makes a small circle around the earth. He who is small becomes big, O soul. Come back down to your palace. Come back to your ivory case. Your mother has brought you betel leaves and areca nuts. I catch a bird on my nose and its heart with a charm. You are the 9 souls, children of the serpent Chitomani. A bird is flying in circles around the rising sun. The earth is so beautiful. Come down and see my 10 children in the rice field. The white elephant with black tusks is on the far bank, and his rider's hook is showing the way. This belongs to Allah and to Muhammad. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Sanatawakin Azabinar. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Then, once the soul of the kris has entered the blade, the shaman Pado'Mih can at last bring it to life with his sacred invocations, purifying the steel in the magical smoke of the benzoin, as God gave life to the inanimate form of Adé, the first man. I purify the heart of my kris in the smoke of Allah and of Muhammad. You iron, you are my parent, I know your origin. It is during this very ancient ceremony of metempsychosis, the transmigration of a soul, when the shaman enters into a trance and pronounces the old sacred formulas, that the kris blade receives its soul magic powers, being from that moment the exact double of the healer. The Bomos come back from their journey thanks to those open doors between nature and supernature, the betel quid and the flickering candle. To rally their protective powers, they have to drink blessed water, and above all eat the rice cake that represents the soul that is offered here as the symbolic surrogate of a human sacrifice, that of a young girl, that the ceremony requires. Finally, the Bomos make everyone a protective charm as a blessing, in the form of a bracelet made of a cotton string, as do also Lao, Khmer and Thai Buddhists. Such a powerful ritual is said to summon demons. It has never before been filmed among the Jawi for fear of stirring the anger of the gods and of the evil spirits, which makes this an invaluable document. Also because these days this has become a rare event, as this magic ceremony is forbidden under pressure from Muslim fundamentalists, whose influence since the 1990s has been spreading throughout the traditional Malay cultures. What better way to organize an important ceremony like this than to call in the region's greatest masters of Dika, the martial art of the Jawi, known in Malay and Indonesian as Silat. Their ritual dance will please the spirits of the ancestors and reconcile those who commissioned it to the gods and their changing moods. These particular practitioners of Dika are the descendants of the royal guards of the ancient Rajas of Saiburi, and they all have the same common ancestor who was a weir tiger. The name Dika comes from the orchestra of oboe, cymbals, drums and gong, as the music is the voices of the ancestors themselves. The driving rhythm of the music supports and guides the dancers, especially that of the bossed gong, whose ring tones are the very voice of the summoned ancestors. The music flows endlessly, like a magic potion that bathes both body and soul. The wrestlers, bomos who practice the martial style called Way of the Kris, are in a trance. They are possessed, or eaten up, as they say, by the ancestral wind. The elder of the bomos ritually ties the fighters' turbans. Then they perform their salutation to the master, in other words, to their mythical ancestors, each of them following his personal inspiration and style. They move in circles, their eyes closed, chewing a betel quid, one of the gates between the human world and the spirit world, to ensure they will return from the oblivion caused by the wind of the trance, manifested by the fluttering of their fingers. These living fingers, as they call them, incarnate the breath of the spirits and the spirits of the ancestors. The latter take possession of the combatants, and it is they who fight, using their bodies. The Jawi have long been protected in their forgotten homeland, like Sleeping Beauty in her castle, but recently the wind of history has begun to blow through it. That too is a dangerous wind, but the Jawi reckon it can be mollified, as can the others. A wave of messianic idealism has taken up many of the Jawi, who believe that the white elephant with black tusks will reappear with the coming apocalypse to announce the coming of the Mahdi, the last prophet, and then the return of their long-lost sovereignty. Meanwhile, however, confident of their future as part of the Kingdom of Thailand, and although they are moving along with the rest of the world into the age of computers and cell phones, the Jawi are not about to give up their tried and tested old ways. nor to stop playing the wild card in their hand, the bomos, still aided by all their magical tools, chief amongst them the enchanted bamboo. And so, in Patani, at the dawn of the 21st century, as the Jawi set forth into the modern world, the memory of their ancient divinities and the voices of their great ancestors, heavy with wondrous promises, still whisper in the magic helixes and the enchanted bamboo.